Here's a shot of Glow's Mile High Green Chili on top of a pork and avocado burrito. For instructions on how to make this and the recipe that goes into it, check out Glow's Kindred Kitchen. Thank you.
Hi, welcome to Glow's Kindred Kitchen, and I'm Glow. So glad you came in today. Today we're going to be making Mile High Green Chili. And we were introduced to this type of chili when we first moved out west, and we had never even heard of green chili. So when we first tasted it, it was delicious, and had no way of knowing how to cook it. So I asked several of my friends and neighbors if I could come over to their place and learn how to make it. So over the years, I've kind of developed my own because everybody seems to cook it a little different. So I'm just going to show you the way that we cook ours. So let's just get started. What I always use is a Dutch oven, and I prefer cast iron over the others when I'm cooking something like this. So I'm going to take my lid off. And the discoloration in here, there's nothing wrong with that. This pot is very clean. It's just it becomes stained over the years, and I've had this for quite some time. So I'm going to go ahead and turn up my temperature on my stove, and I'm going to turn it to medium. So while this is heating up a little, I'm going to go ahead and work on my roast. One of the things when you're cooking green chili is some people, they cut their pork, this is a pork butt, and they'll cut it up into small pieces to put in, and they'll brown the whole thing that way. But I have found, at least for us, I prefer to cook it as a roast. And then when it's all done, I kind of break apart the pieces. And by the time it's done, it's actually breaking apart in itself. And that way you get larger pieces and you can do many different things with this recipe. So I went ahead and I salted and peppered, and I used black pepper on my roast. And I have had it setting here for a little bit, and I like to do that before I put my flour on. So I went ahead and did that, and I did salt and pepper on all sides. So now what you want to do is you want to flour on all sides. So I just kind of take my hand, and I try to keep one hand clean and the other not. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Just depending on the shape of your roast. And the goal though is to get all sides floured. And just use all-purpose flour for this. You don't need any fancy flour. And by doing this, when we put this in the hot oil, it's going to brown very nicely, and it's going to add a lot of flavor to your chili. And I got this particular roast on sale at the grocery store where I usually shop, and it's on sale this week for 99 cents a pound. So they come vacuum sealed, and I had the butcher just cut this one in half because I didn't need a whole one for this recipe. And then I'm just going to freeze the other half for another time. You can do so much with a pork butt. So let me just wash my hands a little here. Kind of gets a paste on your hands when you're putting that flour all over it. There we go. So I can feel the heat already starting to rise off this pot. Now this is canola oil, pure canola oil. It has a high burn temperature. So that's usually what I use, and I wait until it shimmers. And I don't know if you can see this in this pot, but it's starting to shimmer already. By shimmering, it's actually kind of, there's a movement in the oil that you can see. So I noticed here, this side here just needs a little bit more flour where it fell off. There, I think that's good. Now when I put this in here, we should be able to hear it sear. When I say sear, you're going to hear it sizzling. Can you hear that?
A little bit.
I'm going to turn it up just a little bit. Yeah, you can hear it.
There it goes.
It's starting to talk to us. And that's the sound you want. So we're going to go ahead and let this brown on all sides. And so while this is doing this, this will probably take about 10 minutes to do. So we're going to take a break here, and when it's almost done, we'll come back so you can see how, you know, the color that you want. And I wish you could smell this as it's going to be cooking here, because this is just one of those recipes that when you walk in the door, it's like, oh my gosh. So anyway, let's just take a break and we'll be back shortly. Bye. Hi, welcome back. Well, we've had this browning now in our pot for about 12 minutes actually, and I'm just going to show you the last side. See how nice and brown that turned out? So I'm going to go ahead and remove that. Let me get something else to help us move it because it's heavy. This is about a 3-pound roast here. So you can tell that it's nice and brown on all sides. And now what I'm going to do is I went ahead and I cut up 2 onions and 3 stalks of celery. And I'm going to just put that right here in the bottom of this pan that had the oil in it. I probably put in about 2 to 3 tablespoons of the canola oil to start with. We'll just let these saute a bit. And while that's sauteing, we'll just talk a little bit about this roast. Some people, when they cut up the meat, there's no bone involved. And I have found through the years that if I use a roast that has a bone with it, it adds a lot of flavor to your stock, which is what we're gonna be using for this chili in the end. So if I had gotten a boneless one, it would not have the flavor that this one has with the bone in. And also by browning the whole thing on all the sides, that adds a lot of flavor too. And that's part of cooking, you know, you want to add the layers of flavoring as you go. Because you can see here in the pot how the tidbits of the roast from browning are coming up off the bottom, and they're going to help season all of this. It smells so good.
Yes, it does, Miss Well.
Too bad we don't have smell-o-vision.
That could be good and that could be bad in some cases. In this case, very good.
And what you want is to just kind of let this saute till the onions and the celery kind of go a little limp or translucent. And the more you let this saute, it's actually going to bring out more flavor in the end anyway in your dish. So you kind of want that to just saute a little bit. Okay, I'm going to go ahead. I have 6 cloves of garlic here, and I did not put them through my garlic press. I just smashed them, and I have like a wooden mallet that I use to smash those, and I went ahead and did that. So I'm going to add these now to it. And I don't add my garlic at the same time I do my onions and my celery, because it will turn bitter if you cook it and brown it too fast. And you can tell there's big pieces, but as this is cooking, it's just gonna kind of melt into this and it'll just be really good. Oh, that garlic smells wonderful. And I have found, you know, that if you do all your prep work ahead of time when you're cooking, it just goes so much quicker. When I cut up these onions and the celery, it probably took me about 7 or 8 minutes to do that, and then just, you know, smashing up your garlic, you know, peeling it and smashing it. Maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes max. Okay, that looks good. Now we're going to add our seasonings. And I have found that if I add my seasonings to this first and let the oils absorb into the seasonings, it turns out a lot better. I have 2 small bay leaves here, or if you have 1 large one, that would be fine too. One thing you want to make sure of is when you're done and are ready to serve this, that you pull the bay leaves out, because you do not want to eat those. But they do add a lot of, you know, flavor to your meal. And what I added in here was I did 1 tablespoon of oregano, 1.5 tablespoons of thyme, or actually 1 tablespoon of thyme, and 2.5 tablespoons of cumin. And then I'm going to be adding a couple dashes of sage and a couple of dashes of red chili. And that's the sage, and this is the chili powder. So maybe like 1/8 of a teaspoon of each. The reason I didn't add any more of the red chili powder is because we're going to be adding green chilies, Hatches green chilies. And Hatches green chilies are grown in New Mexico. And there's something about the soil and just the climate there that makes a delicious chili. I wish you guys could smell this. This just smells so good.
It does, Miss Clove.
So what I'm going to do here, you can tell how the spices just start blooming and it just smells wonderful right now. I'm going to go ahead and take and put my roast back in here. Also, if you have a roast that's kind of fatty, make sure you cut some of the fat off. I did trim a little off of this one before I started to prepare it today, but you want some of that fat on there to add some flavor, and then at the very end, if there's fat, you just want to remove it, but it does add a lot of flavor to your dish if you leave some of that on there when you're cooking. So now what we're going to do is we're going to be adding the rest of our ingredients. So here I have some potato water. And this was from yesterday. I had made potato salad, and I always save my water. And I thought today would be perfect to use this. And here's the green chilies, and these are the mild ones. You can get mild or hot, medium or hot, but I usually do the mild. And I'm going to use this to help preventing it from splashing all over. I'm just cleaning out my can. And these were fire roasted. They roast them over a fire. You can see the little black bits there. And then they peel them because you don't eat the outside of the pepper after they're roasted. And I'm just going to rinse this out a little, and I just don't want to waste this. It just smells so good and tastes so good. There we go. And then I add 1 can of Rotel tomatoes, and what that is, it's tomatoes along with some jalapenos, but it's not real spicy. But if you don't like that, all you have to do is just add the tomatoes and you're fine too. There. And you can add chicken broth to it, but since I was using the potato water today, I've decided to use, it's called Better Than Bouillon, and it's definitely better than bouillon, but it's a good replacement for if you're not using your own chicken broth or chicken bone broth, either one. And I think I'm going to add 1 more to this. And there we go. I don't want to waste any of that bouillon, Better Than Bouillon stuff on my spoon, because it just adds a lot of flavor. So that's all there is to this recipe. We're gonna put it in our oven at about 250 to 275 degrees you can put it in the oven for 3 to 5 hours. We'll probably have ours in about 3.5 hours, and then we'll check it and see if it's done. It depends on how big of a roast you've got and stuff. But by doing that, you do not have to mess with it. If you have it in your oven on low and slow like that, you can go about doing whatever you want to do. We're probably going to be working outside today because it's a beautiful day and I won't have to worry about it. I was originally going to do this in the crock pot this morning, but we got getting up and going around a little too late. But this recipe you can do many different ways. I could have just cooked it low and slow on the stove, but if I did that, I'd want to be staying in my home to watch it a little more closer. So anyway, we'll see you back in about 3.5 hours so you can see the finished product. Bye. Hi, welcome back. Well, I just removed my pot from the oven that contains the green chili, and I'm going to go ahead and take the lid off. And remember, I always lift it away from us so we don't get burnt from the steam.
Miss Low.
Wow, and look at that.
It smells good.
Yeah. And let's see look how tender that is.
Very tender, Miss Low.
And that's what we want. So I'm going to go ahead and attempt to remove this in mostly one piece, but I think it maybe, well, I think the bones.
You got it, I think. Go. There you go.
There we go. Yay! So, yeah, look how nice that is. So what I'm going to do is we're going to let this cool a little because you can tell that it is way too hot to handle right now. So I'm just going to move this over to the side, and then we're going to work on this green chili part. So I'm going to just put this right over here. So for this, what we're going to do is we're going to thicken this up. Some people actually eat it like this, but I like to thicken it up some because we're going to be serving this tonight over burritos. So the first thing I'm going to do is I have this, and it's a very handy gadget to have. It's a hand blender, and I use this quite often for my soups and stuff to help break up some of the the vegetables and stuff in it. It's like a puree is what it is. So there's a high and a low setting on here. And the button's right here. I've had this probably 30, 35 years.
Is that low or high?
Huh?
Is that low or high, Miss Flo?
This is high.
Oh, okay.
I think that's probably enough. And this particular blender is also very easy to clean. When you clean it, what you do is you put it in your dishwater in the sink and you just run it through it. Of course, you don't want anything else in your sink when you're doing it, but it cleans the blade really well. And be careful because that blade is sharp. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on my burner here, and this is still very hot, but I'm going to thicken it up just a little bit more, I'm going to add some cornstarch mixture. And I went ahead and I did this up prior to starting this again. And you just mix cornstarch with cold water. Now I was going to share with you guys too before we finished the first video when we were putting it into, before we put it in the oven. I used my potato water as part of my liquid for my roast. And because of that, I did not add any extra flour, you know, when I was sauteing the onions and the celery and stuff. If I had not used the potato water, I would have added the flour that I had left over and browned that really well before I added anything else. And this will thicken as it warms up here and cooks a little. Sometimes we might have to add a little bit more. We'll just see how this is. That was about 2 tablespoons of cornstarch that I mixed in with some water. So we're going to let this thicken here for a little bit, and I'm going to let this roast cool off just a little bit longer, and we'll be back and I'll show you how I assemble this for the burritos for dinner. Bye. Hi, welcome back. Well, I went ahead and I got my chili thickened up here.
Looks good, Miss Flo.
How nice that is.
Looks thick.
And the color will vary depending on the chilies that you have, and also what, you know, how long you've browned your roast. I browned my roast really well, so it's a deep color. And we're going to go ahead and put a burrito together. And I'm just going to show you one way to use this recipe. So when I removed this from the oven, I took and I had wrapped up tortillas in foil and just stuck them in the oven because my oven was warm. And then I had warmed up some refried beans. So what I usually do is I take the refried beans and just put it down the center. Not a lot. You can even do without the beans if you want and just serve them on the side.
Nope, nope, gotta have the beans.
And then I shredded some of this pork, and see how it just falls apart? It's really nice, very flavorful.
Very tender. Looks good.
There.
Let's go.
And then what I usually do is I take and I put some avocado in there. So I'm just gonna cut a little bit of this avocado to put inside. Well, that's quite a bit, isn't it?
It's hefty.
Yep. So turn it over. Let me just wash my hands here. Then what you do is you take some of this delicious mile-high green chili and just put it over the top. And then you garnish it with some tomato. A little bit of onion. And I didn't have any lettuce on hand, but I do have spinach, which is very good with it too. And then of course a little bit of cilantro on top. Isn't that pretty?
Looks good to me.
And I'm going to go ahead and take a bite of this so you guys can, or cut into it so you guys can see exactly what it looks like. And of course you can add more chili to it if you want, or less, or serve it on the side, whatever way you want to do it. I got a piece here with some avocado in it.
Does smell delicious.
Oh, it does. Mmm. Oh, wow. We haven't had this in a while. It's very good. So thank you for joining us today. And if you like this, I would really appreciate it if you would like and subscribe to our channel. Have a great day. Bye.